So I just wanted to welcome you to the podcast, Kathi. I'm so excited to have you here and so excited to jump in and dive in with you all about being prepared for crisis. And
Uh,
what better topic to be talking about right now?
Renee, thank you so much for having me on. And I know it sounds weird, but it's like my favorite topic to talk about.
Yeah, somebody's got to talk about it. So,
Right?
yeah. So, before we kind of jump in a little bit, just tell us a little about you. I know you and I were just chit chatting and how you have so many interesting things going on in your world. So, why don't you share a little bit about those?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is we own a retreat center up in the Northern California mountains, and it's called Writing at the Red House. So we have a lot of writers who come through, and we live up there, and we're just loving it. I know it's everything's weird during COVID right now, but our latest thing is we just got chickens, and
Yay.
so I write with chickens every single morning, and it's the best thing I've ever done.
Yeah, yeah. We had chickens for a while and we absolutely loved having them. They were great till while we had them.
Yeah, chicken meditation is a real thing. Let's just be super clear.
My husband was not always a fan because when I'd let them out around our backyard, they would leave little droppings all over the concrete, and he
It's
was not
fertilizer.
he was
Oh, on
not
the
a fan.
concrete. On the concrete.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the problem.
Yes, in the garden, in the grass, I don't think he minded so much, but they would walk around our back patio and like come up to our back door, and he's like, "Why? Why
Yeah.
do you let the chickens out all over the place?"
They're so great with their little personalities and everything. But yes, it is a lifestyle change for sure.
Yes. All right. Well, so Kathi, tell us a little bit about your book because I know you have a new book called Ready for Anything, Preparing Your Heart and Home for a Crisis, Big or Small. And I know just before we popped on here, I was texting back and forth with my best friend, and she was talking about how right now with COVID and all that has like come about since then has just created this massive divide in our country, and how so many people feel like they're living in crisis mode so
Hmm.
much of the day and so much of
Right.
time. So tell us a little bit about your book. Like, what is it all about? Why did you write this book?
Yeah, so people, it's very funny because this came out just as COVID was coming out, and people are like, "How'd you write this so fast?" And I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. This was in the works a long time ago." It really stemmed from a couple of personal experiences. One was living in San Jose, and we lived in townhouses, and two doors down from us, that townhouse caught on fire. So the
Mm,
fire was two walls away from our townhouse, and we ran out when people were yelling fire, and we're standing out on the front lawn watching our neighbor's house just be engulfed in flames. It was crazy.
yeah.
And we were standing out there, and I looked at my husband and I said, Jeremy didn't come home from school. This was our college age student. It was his first day of classes. I wasn't really familiar with his schedule. He goes, "No, we would have heard if Jeremy came." And then, just as he's saying that, he runs back into the house because he's like, "I can't live with myself not knowing."
Yeah.
And so 30 seconds later, Roger comes running back out, and I'm so relieved. And 45 seconds later, Jeremy comes running out of the house.
Oh.
So I Roger wants everybody to know he was the guy who ran into a burning building to save his child. But it's kind of hard to get around the fact, like, I grabbed the dog and left my child in a burning building.
Man.
So it's not okay. And so what we realized is we didn't have a plan.
Yeah.
We didn't have a plan for an emergency. And then the other thing is, with where we live now up in the mountains, between fire, we live in Northern California. We're known for our wildfires. Snow that has kept some of our neighbors, inside their houses for 3 to 4 weeks at a time. We have to be prepared for everything. And I have always wanted to be prepared, known I should be prepared, but was overwhelmed by the thought of trying to get prepared. So these are little
Hmm.
steps that anybody can take to be more prepared today than you were yesterday, without, there are two extremes. I'm just going to trust God. Like, I'm not going to do anything because I'm so overwhelmed. So I'm just going to trust God and put it down as faith. And then the other extreme is 10 years of baked beans being guarded by an AK-47.
Yes.
And I'm
Yes.
like, there has to be a middle there. So this is the
Yes.
middle ground where it's like, yeah, I can trust, the God I believe in, but I also know that I've been given a brain, and wisdom is a beautiful thing, and I need to be using that.
Yeah, 100%. And so as you were talking, I was kind of sitting there and you kind of touched on it a little bit, was the first question that came up for me was, how do you balance that sense of preparedness versus fear and that living in fear? And so even just recently, my husband and I were talking about some different stuff, and he mentioned wanting to get something. And I was like, that to me sounds like you're living in fear of the what if's going to happen. And
Yeah.
so for me, I tend to be like the optimist, the person
Right.
that thinks the grass is always going to be great on the other side, and we're
Yeah.
just going to move forward, and that, whatever happens, we're going to handle it, whatever. So how do you balance that feeling of I mean, maybe it's the balance of my husband and I, the worrier and the optimist, and like, how do you find that middle ground so that you're being prepared but not living in fear?
Well, Renee, on the Strength Finders test, my number one trait is positivity.
Mm,
Like, I always think everything's going to work out. I always
yeah.
think life is going to get better. I always, always, always. So I would replace the word fear with wisdom.
Mm,
Because I think my optimism can get me into trouble. I tend to be optimistic when it comes to time. Like, everything's just going to work out just fine. There's not going to be any hang up. Whereas my husband says, what if we left 15 minutes early in case there was traffic? And
yeah.
in my brain, traffic never came up, even though every time I leave the house, there's traffic. And so I think, yeah, I think that right now, and I'm not admonishing you, I'm admonishing all of us, that we can't shut people down saying you're living in fear.
Mm,
Because what that says is that, these little pringly things that some people get, it sounds like you and I are married to very similar people who maybe are a little bit more planners than we are, maybe a little bit more like, my friend says that I'm the yay and she's the nay. And, but you know what? Those are the people who keep us alive.
yeah.
Those are the people who make sure that the bridges aren't just good enough. They make sure that it doesn't just, take our way, it takes our weight plus. Oh, excuse me, my dog has a toy.
You're okay.
And my husband is going to get that in just a second. Did you hear me? I'm so sorry, Roger. Can you grab the toy from her? So sorry.
You're
She's
good.
she's used to being outdoors and running all over our acreage. And then we come to my mom's house and, here, could you hang out with us here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you, babe. Um, so when people feel like they want to we want to shut people down and say, I'm not going to live with fear. I'm going to live my life. Yes, I want you to live your life. But there are some things that we have to pay attention to now that we didn't have to pay attention to a year ago.
Yeah.
And these are the new constraints for now. And so let's use wisdom to make the best of life that we can now. And then we can move on and do the things that we want to do. It's just our new reality for a little while, and we're going to figure it out. But it's reality.
Yeah.
So let's prepare the best we can. We don't have to go overboard. When your husband says you're going overboard, then you'll know you're going overboard. But most of what I'm suggesting is what the Red Cross has been talking about for years. Have, 2 weeks worth of food on hand. Have 2 weeks worth of water on hand. Have a 3-month emergency fund. Now, that doesn't mean 3 months of your normal fund, but like, could we get through an emergency for 3 months? The
Mm-hmm.
money we have. Those are the things. It's more common sense than it is fear.
Yeah. No, and I 100% get that. And I think that that's where I just wanted that kind of line drawn, in a sense of
Yeah.
like, where do we, because you could get caught up into this place of like the fears and the what ifs and like down that spiral. And, for me, I tend to be, there's like there's two different kinds of what ifs. And there's the what if, the world ends. And then
Right.
I'm always being the one to be like, but what if it doesn't?
Right.
Like,
Right.
like,
And we need you.
yeah,
We need you to say, okay, so this is our reality. How do we make the best out of this reality without going down the rabbit hole
yes.
of all? So that's why I do not have 10 years worth of baked beans. That's why,
Mm-hmm.
but before COVID hit, I, I had toilet paper I could give away to people. I had Clorox wipes I could give away to people. I didn't have to go do the crazy shopping run
Yeah.
because I knew what I had. And that's where I want people to say, no matter what comes, I'm okay. And this is the best version of my life I can be living right now. And so, well, there may be fear about the overarching thing. My life is not marked by fear day to day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's exactly like there's, like you said, those wise choices, things that you can do. And then on the flip side of it, like being, or not flip side of it, but like living each day
Mhm.
not marked by that fear. So,
Exactly.
thinking through, what are some of those like real practical, tangible things that you would recommend like busy moms do to kind of prepare for crises?
Yeah. So I do believe you don't have to do everything in one day. So that's really, really important to me that people don't know that they do. But there are some super simple things that you could do today that don't cost a lot of money, that don't take hardly any time. One of those things, I want to make sure that everybody in America has a simple first aid kit.
Mm-hmm.
Just a first aid kit. And here's the other part that is going to be harder for some of our moms out there, knowing where it's at. I know, right? But like most first aid kits have a little handle on it. So could you just put a little hook up inside one of your drawers or cabinets or closets or something, and that's where it goes. And if grandma's coming to watch the kids, she knows where it's at. We live up in the mountains, so we have to get used to, we can't run to the doctor for every little thing.
Yeah.
And we also can't run to the vet for every little thing. So, one of the things we did, we got pet insurance, but it also comes with a televet. So
Mm.
we
Mm-hmm.
can call somebody up and say, hey, this is what's going on. And when our dog got stung by a bee, we don't have kids, but we do have animals. When our dog got stung by a bee and her face was like hanging off, they were able to tell us over the phone what to look for. And we realized we didn't need a trip to the vet.
Yeah.
And so, that saved us hundreds of dollars
Yeah.
for that. To go to an emergency vet right now during COVID is not a fun experience. And so we were able to call and figure that out. So it's things like that. Do you have an emergency kit? Do you have 2 weeks worth of water and food? Now, what was so funny when we were going through edits on this book, my whole team said, Kathi, you're being over dramatic. Nobody needs 2 weeks worth of food. When are we going to have a problem getting food? Now, this is before, we had shortages of meat. We had, you couldn't go to the grocery store. Everybody was trying to figure out their food supply. So
Mm-hmm.
now, while things are um, decent right now, is the time to be not clearing the shelves, but instead of buying, just corn on the cob, which is fabulous, can you buy corn on the cob and buy a couple of cans of corn so that, the next time you want to make your Mexican pizza or something like that, or, whatever that is, that you have those ingredients if you can't get to the store. So
Mm.
that's we call it 3-2-3. I want you to have, and I think this is the least important right now, a 3-day get out bag. Now, if you live someplace like I do, where there are wildfires, a 3-day get out bag is really important. But the 2 weeks worth of food, water, and power for your house, that's really important right now with what we're going through. And then the 3-month emergency fund. Now, if you are like us, our income has been reduced, but also things like vacation are not happening. Going out to eat is not happening.
Mm-hmm.
We've really been able to hunker down. And if we have an emergency, we do have some money set aside so that we would be able to get through. But that may not be the thing you can do. So I would say do the things that you can do. If
Yeah.
you can't save up the money, do the 2 weeks worth of food and water by just paying a little bit extra. Get your 3-day bag together. You can get that together from stuff you have around the house. Those things you could do. And then, are there ways to save money that you could put a little bit aside in case there is an emergency? And your emergency, Renee, maybe your dishwasher breaks.
Yeah.
I mean, I do not want to be stuck in a house with multiple children with a broken dishwasher.
Yeah.
That may be the emergency you need to take care of.
Yeah, no, and I think that that's so true. And I feel like like for me, there was a big chunk of time, like during COVID, I was like, this is a great opportunity to clear out everything in my cupboard.
Mm.
So how do you kind of manage that, the sense of like using up what's in
Right.
there so that stuff doesn't go bad, something doesn't go stale, whatever,
Yeah.
and that you're not just having things tucked away? Because even then, like when I went through, I was like, gosh, I have like a couple of jars of bulgur. What am I going to make with bulgur? You know, like those
Right.
sorts of things, so that you're not stuck. Like even if it was a 2 week, I mean, if it's 2 weeks and you have no food, you're going to eat plain bulgur just like it is. But
Yeah.
if you didn't, like, how do you manage that so that you at least have something that kind of goes together, that you can make together, or that things aren't going bad? Like, how do you have a system for that?
Yeah. So a couple of things is I have put together for myself 2 weeks worth of meals that my family will eat. And so this is using things like, you know, canned beans, canned tomatoes, those kind of things. So I make sure I have that. But I also look at expiration dates. And I just have a simple roll of green stickers. And if
Mm,
something is coming up on its expiration date, I put a green sticker on it to say, use this first.
yeah.
And so, and then also, really cycling through the things in your freezer. It's very easier for freezer things to get lost.
Yeah.
So when I'm planning my meals, and I plan my meals each week, I go through my freezer and I'm like, okay, what's something simple I could use here that I want to make sure that gets used up. During one of the world wars, they had a slogan. It said, use it up, wear it out, make do, do without. And I can't think of a better time to be thinking through those things than right now. And one of the things that my husband and I say to each other as we're like planning meals, or like, what are we going to grab for a snack? We always yell at each other, fresh first, fresh first. Like, use up your fresh stuff first. Are those
Yeah.
carrots going to go bad? What's the expiration date on that bag of salad? Thinking through those things, and then go to things in your freezer, go to things in, so look at your fridge first, look at your pantry, anything like breads and things like that, and then look at your freezer, and then look at your stable, shelf stable, and figure out what do you need to use when. And
Mm-hmm.
that will help you save money if you're constantly using up things. And this is the other thing, is have an emergency pizza in the freezer for the time. I tried to make nachos out of sweet potato fries, and I've had them before and they were excellent. Let's just say mine were not excellent this time. And so I would say only maybe every couple of months I have a meal that truly bombs. This was it. Having that frozen pizza is a good backup just in case.
Oh yeah, we've totally been there. For a while we were getting at the beginning of COVID, or before it started, I had signed up for the meal subscription box with Purple Carrot.
Yeah.
And so we were getting it very regularly, and it was perfect. I was like, this came in perfect during COVID, like wonderful, and we don't have to worry about food. And initially they were all really great. And then as they started progressing, they kept getting a little bit spicier and a little bit spicier. And so
Yeah.
then it became my kids no longer wanted to eat them. And even when we started leaving out some of the spicy ingredients, they would still just naturally have a little bit of kick versus,
Yeah.
whatever. And so there were plenty of times where, like, well, this is a little too spicy for you, pizza it is.
Yes,
Like, I'm going to let it
exactly.
be.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally get that. And I feel like the pizza in the freezer is huge, huge.
Yeah, you just need that so you can feel free to experiment and try new things. And I know what I'll do next time on the sweet potato fries. It's going to be very different. But yeah, to be able to say, I'm gonna try to use it up. It was a great clean out the fridge of all these fresh ingredients, but I may have gone a little too creative.
Yeah, yeah. So I know that this is something I don't know a whole lot about. And I know when we were talking about this call, my assistant Katie, she was talking about like your recommendations on dried food versus canned food. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
absolutely. So I think that there are certain things that are great dried. Beans are great dried. But here's what I would say: don't go get a bunch of dried beans, having never soaked beans, used beans
Mm,
like that. There's a rhythm to it. So
yeah.
I I think canned is easiest. There's a lot of great tasting canned food. And it's so funny. When my husband and I first got married, he goes, just so you know, I don't like canned food. And I it's all about seasoning really and texture. And so understanding that is really, really important. You can't just dump a bunch of canned food into something and think it's going to taste good. It's so much about seasoning. Now, and canned gives you a very long shelf life, especially where I live, where, you know, we're in the mountains, there are a lot of critters. They're not getting into the cans. And so you don't want a lot of dried stuff. So just think about what your situation is. But I do keep a lot of rice on hand, dried beans, you know, so the legumes kind of thing. And you have to buy what your family is going to eat.
Mm-hmm.
That's really, really important. And I freeze a lot of stuff, but also freezer room is more precious than canned room food.
Yeah.
And so, and especially if you have a garden, canning is a great skill to have. Like we have a lot of, and I know a lot of places do, a lot of wild blackberries where we live. And so, you know, we're going to be canning next weekend jam, syrup, and blackberry vinegar. And
Mm.
so those canned things will last an indefinite amount of time.
Yeah.
And so that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So, a little side note, when
Yeah.
COVID kind of hit and my husband was like, it was before he works in tech. And so he had told me, he's like, hey, just so you know, Apple shut down, Google shut down, like everything's shutting down. It's coming our way next. Like it's going
Yeah.
to happen, you know? And so I remember being at Target and thinking, you know, I'm just going to grab an extra bag of black beans or an extra whatever. And then I was at home doing something. I was like, you know what? I didn't see any garbanzo beans at the store. Like they were already all wiped out. I'm going to order some on Amazon because our kids love garbanzo beans. So I ordered some garbanzo beans on Amazon. Didn't pay attention to the quantity that
Uh-oh.
came with them. And I ended up with like 20 pounds of garbanzo beans.
There you go.
And so my husband is like, and now what are you going to do with 20 pounds of garbanzo beans? I was like, well, yeah. So the kids have made like hummus. They've
I was just going to
made
say,
all
hopefully you like hummus.
yeah, they've made all kinds of stuff with the garbanzo beans because I didn't realize that I was just looking for like an extra bag or two, not 20 pounds.
Hey, I want to try this the next time I go there. Trader Joe's has chocolate hummus.
Yeah, you know, I've had it before and it was delicious.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think you got too many garbanzo beans. I think 20 pounds is exactly right.
I don't think that their chocolate hummus is made out of garbanzo beans.
Oh, darn. Oh, I thought it was really like a hummus kind of thing.
I don't know. You'd have to check, but I'm pretty sure when I had it, it's not garbanzo bean.
Oh, darn.
I double checked.
I thought you had like the answer to all your problems.
That would be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, as we get kind of close to the end, if we could do only one thing to prepare for a crisis, what should that be?
Okay, so this is my thing for busy moms. Busy moms, the one thing I would really encourage you to do is just take an inventory of all the food in your house. I'm going to give you a two-pronged because water is really important too.
Mm-hmm.
So there are water storage tubs on Amazon that you can get. But even if you just got a couple of flats from Costco, you know, those $4 flats of water, I would rather you have that, two of those, than not have anything at all.
Yeah.
And so, because if water goes out at your house or something like that, repairmen are going to be much busier than they would be. And things take longer during COVID. They just do. So get a couple of flats of water. I would really encourage you to get a couple of the 7-gallon tubs of water. So if your water does go out, you do have something for an emergency. But for moms, I think having an inventory of what you actually have on hand food-wise is huge, because you may already have 2 weeks worth of food on hand. You may already have everything you need. So taking that inventory and say, how many meals could I get out of this? And then maybe you need to go buy $25 worth of food to complete it. Maybe you need the syrup for the pancake mix you already have. Or maybe you need the garbanzo beans. So you're going to call your friend Renee and say, how can I score me some? So, it's just knowing what you have and working from that is going to help you so much. And we have over on our website, it's at kathilipp.com, RFA, ready for anything. We have a free pantry, freezer, and refrigerator inventory sheet. So you can just take an inventory of everything you have.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So I think this call was a stretch for me because of that place that I am in, a place of trying to clear out so much in my home
Yeah.
and not wanting to store up and not wanting to save, but yet also trying to balance, and then like not living in fear, but also trying to balance, like you said, living with just wise decisions and like what's practical and what can I do. And I think it is really important to highlight. And like you said, is that everybody's going to be in a little bit different situation, and everybody's foods are going to be a little bit different, and everybody's
Yeah.
resources are going to be a little bit different. And so it's less about necessarily having like this is one right way to do, but
Yeah.
like these are
Right.
general recommendations of things that you could think about. And maybe even if you just took that into consideration of like this call was something like, now you can think about, okay,
Yeah.
what do I have in my home? Like what are resources that I have, and looking at those.
And Renee, here's the thing. I don't, you know that my main platform is about decluttering.
Yeah.
So I'm all about decluttering. So I really encourage that. So I want you to think about it like this. Curate. It's getting rid of the things you don't need.
Mhm.
That bulgur that you're never going to eat. Even in an emergency, I don't want you eating bulgur if that is something you would never ever eat. I want you to have food. You have enough emotionally going on. I don't want you to be saying, yeah, you were going through this really hard thing and now you have to eat bulgur.
Yeah.
So I want you to have the right things there, and I want you to get rid of all the wrong things. And I think uh, it helps so much to declutter, to know what you actually have that you'll actually use. And that's a beautiful thing.
And I would totally 100% agree with that. I feel like so many of us have things in our fridge or in our kitchen or whatever that are just there because they're
Right.
there and they sit there forever. And so it's like either use it or get rid of it, like get
Yep,
it out of there. And
exactly.
then, like you said, store up and use the things that your family will actually use.
Right.
Perfect. So any last little thing that you want to leave people with?
You know what? I always remind my clutter-free community, you are more strategic than you know, you're smarter than you know, you're tougher than you know, and you're braver than you know. And I really think during this time, as we're trying to figure all this stuff out, that don't underestimate the wisdom you already have.
Mm-hmm.
And, continue learning, continue figuring it out, but you have a beautiful brain. And so rely on yourself, understand your gut, and listen to people who are smarter than you, always, always, always. But don't underestimate your own ability to not only survive all of this, but really thrive during this and make those pivots that we all need
Yeah.
to make this. I don't want people to just survive. I want them to take a new look at their lives.
Yeah.
And what is something new that I'm learning out of this? How am I learning? What are the things that I clung to that I no longer need to cling to because I've learned a different way to live? And I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like right now, the world or the crisis and everything that people are in right now is a beautiful opportunity to look at where can I make some shifts and where can I make some change and where can I make some
Right.
pivots. And so seeing it kind of as an opportunity to make those moves and to make those changes when before things may not have felt like that was even a possible reality. And so using
Exactly.
that, yeah, 100%. I agree. Cool. Well, so if I know you already talked about your free resources that people
Yeah.
can find over on your website, where else can people find you and connect with you and get to know you?
My favorite place for people to connect with me is on Facebook in Clutter Free Academy. We have about 11,000 women and a couple of brave men who are all trying to declutter their lives and get the right things into their house. So Come over there and join us. It's the kindest corner of the internet, and you'll get so much accomplished.
Isn't that fun? Like I love like the group of women that I have inside Rising Moms Club is just so amazing. And every time I get in there, anytime anybody's having a hard day or anything's going wrong or whatever, they're always just so encouraging and so supportive. And like all the stuff on social media is crap. And then my own
Yes.
little pocket and space is like, oh, this feels good.
It's like,
what?
oh, this is where all the good humans came.
I know. I
Right?
know. Nobody's posting just random stuff on their feed. They're like posting really good things in the group. So anyway.
I love it.
Well, thank you so much for hopping on. This was awesome. I loved chatting with you. I loved connecting. And I hope that everybody listening is going to have one different resource that they can implement. And like you said, in certain areas, you're going to need to be prepared for different things, different scenarios, the different things that could potentially happen than in other areas. Like you're in maybe fire season, I'm in earthquake area. Like, and just knowing that and being aware of those different things and those realities and not living in fear of them, but living with wisdom and like being prepared for them. So I appreciate
Love
that.
it. Thank
Cool.
you.
Thank you so much for hopping on.